Kurt, you've been riding his thoroughbred all day. It's only fair that he gets to ride yours tonight," she said, turned around and left the bedroom. What the hell? I told myself. My mind went over the events of the last day. It started with the drive to Audra's business owner's house in Rolling Hills, California. Audra was giddy, yet somewhat apprehensive. It was the first time her boss, the owner Chet Halverson, had invited his company's department heads to his home. We would be staying until Sunday evening and then heading back to our condo in Los Angeles. As I thought about the drive, I wondered if this had already been planned. There may have not been any actual plans, but maybe just suggestions had been made. If my anger had not already been high from her walking out after making that statement, it would definitely be raised after thinking that. I continued to review last night and the events of today. We drove up to the gated community and were greeted by a security guard. This was an area of LA that had a lot of famous and very wealthy people. We drove to one of the biggest estates, and I have to admit, I was impressed. I'm sure Audra was in awe also. The house had to be 10,000 square feet, a two-story Italianate-style mansion. I knew Audra's company was multinational, but I guess I never thought it was so big as to allow the owner to afford a house like this, especially in this community. When he met us at the door, he was gracious enough, but with an air of pretentiousness hiding just below the surface. By 7 o'clock, all of the department heads were there. Audra is the director of human resources. I was proud of her accomplishments. At 29, she had already been a human resource executive at 3 different companies, including her recent directorship promotion with this company. There were 4 other couples there. The dinner was filled with interesting conversation and, of course, some shop talk. I felt a little out of place. Being a technology engineer, I spend most of my day working on projects either by myself or with just a handful of others. I think I held my own through it all. I am a nerd, but I am not socially awkward. That night, in our own suite, Audra was hot and we made love passionately. After an hour of satisfying each other, we snuggled and fell asleep with smiles on our faces. I woke up early and lay staring at my beautiful wife. We met at a Starbucks. She actually had grabbed her latte from that barista and turned around quickly to run right into me. Of course, the lid came off the cup and hot coffee landed on my chest. Damn, that was hot. I inhaled sharply, stepped back, and pulled my shirt away from my chest. I wasn't even looking at the woman who had caused the pain. I was looking down at my shirt. Damn, now I need to go buy a new shirt, I thought to myself. Audra was extremely apologetic as I looked up at her. I am so sorry. Are you okay? What can I do? She paused and our eyes met. I can't say that it was love at first sight. I am logical enough to know that is not possible, but I did feel an instant attraction and connection with this woman as she fumbled for what to do. Can I pay for it to be cleaned, or buy you a new one if it doesn't come clean? She asked apologetically. I responded with, don't worry about it. It's an old shirt, probably past its shelf life anyways. Yeah, I thought I was smooth. It did make her laugh though. Well, that was 5 years ago. We dated for a couple years and then got married. This morning I was on top of the world. She slept next to me. When we had showered and dressed, we made our way to the dining room where breakfast food was set out buffet style. We grabbed a plate and then sat down to eat. We were almost finished with the meal when Chet came in from his barn. He was dressed to ride. So, everyone, I have horses available to ride on the trails in the community. I will be able to point out some of my more famous friends and neighbors' houses. Rolling Hills is an equestrian community. A number of the residents have horses and there are trails throughout the community and surrounding hillsides. We would be taking advantage of those. I grew up in the Midwest and we had horses on our farm. I was quite comfortable around horses. In fact, I was a member of the 4-H and even competed in my early teens. I smiled, remembering the good times riding my horse. I looked forward to riding again, as it had been almost a decade. Chet continued to speak. I've got horses that can handle novice riders, and horses that will need an experienced rider. Let's go out to the barn and we'll pair you up depending upon your experience. I was very impressed with his barn. the quality of his horses, and the tack. Seeing as we have such a large group, I borrowed a few horses from some of my neighbors. I'll assure you that they are all quality animals and you have nothing to be afraid of. He said like we all were inexperienced city dwellers. I hated that smugness and spoke up, I'd like to ride this thoroughbred. I said as I walked up to a gorgeous animal standing proud in her stall. She wasn't even outfitted to be ridden. Whoa! Chet said, Brandy is a temperamental animal. I don't think she would be a good fit for anyone here. I opened the stall and approached the horse in such a way as to make her feel safe, yet know that I was an experienced rider. She didn't even flinch, sensing my confidence. Chet noticed this, and with a smirk on his face said, if you are truly set on riding Brandy, I have to warn you, I am not liable if she bucks you. I could tell he was trying to scare me as well as show off to the others there. Audra then said, Kurt, maybe you should listen to Chet and ride another horse that he picks out for you. I know my male ego was hurt by what she said. It showed lack of confidence in her husband. She had seen pictures, and even trophies of my riding abilities. Why was she questioning my ability? No, I believe Brandy and I will do just fine. I declared. Chet smirked again and then told his stableman to get Brandy's tack. I assisted him as he put it on her. She was a little skittish around him. It made me wonder how he treated her. When we were all mounted up, Chet said, we'll walk along the trails as I point out some of the more famous people's houses. Then we'll go back to the house for lunch. We probably spent at least 2 hours walking through the community, him introducing us to the important neighbors. I feigned interest as I got Brandy to feel more comfortable with my riding style, and I got more comfortable with how she responded. I was anxious to let her run. Finally, as Audra and I rode side by side, we came to an area of hills that had been kept undeveloped so that the owners could enjoy time on their horse, galloping through the hills. I turned to Audra and said, let's pick up the pace and let these majestic animals show us what they can do. Kurt, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Let's stay with the group. It is the right thing to do. Audra, you are riding a quarter horse, one of the most stable, even-tempered breed of horses. You need to trust your mount. The horse knows what to do. I don't want to take that chance, she said. Just then Chet cantered his horse up to where we were at and said, we'll head back to the house now. I think we have done enough riding for today. I was hoping to let this fine horse run a bit. Can't we take a little more time in the open countryside? Well, Kurt, you do seem to look comfortable on a horse, but most of this group is inexperienced. I wouldn't want anyone's overconfidence cause them to get hurt. I could hear the condescending tone in his voice. He could tell I was a rider, but I was a simple nerd in his eyes. He was challenging me. I would play on his stupidity. It's just as well, Audra feels it's best that we stay with the crowd. I wouldn't want anyone to feel inferior because of their inexperience. Yes, I was goading him. He may own these horses, and ride them occasionally, but he was not a rider. He owned them as a status symbol for his neighbors. I saw a look of contempt on his face, just for an instant. Well, let's have lunch and then maybe you and I can come back out and let these beasts run. I didn't like the way he called the horses beasts. He sounded like they were just dumb animals to him. During lunch we talked. The others were all talking about the homes and famous people they had met. I could see Chet's chest puffing out with every compliment or comment. After lunch we sat around on the large patio and discussed various topics. I was only half listening, my mind was on getting back out there and galloping through the rolling hills. As a few of the guests started excusing themselves to go change out of their dirty, sweaty clothes, Chet spoke up and said, so Kurt, do you still think you can handle Brandy in the open country? I know he was trying to make me back down, and I think Audra sensed it too. Honey, she said. Let's just relax here and talk with the others. She was trying to keep me from either making a fool of myself or showing up her boss. I however didn't like his condescending, better than all the others, attitude. So I spoke up and said, I'd love to ride, but I don't want to take you away from your guests. There, now I was either challenging him or giving him an out. I could tell he wanted to see me fail, so he said, they can find something to do for a couple hours. Let's go see what you've got. As I got up to go back out to the barn, Audra gave me a look that said, don't fuck this up. She clearly didn't want me to do anything that would make her boss, the owner, look bad. During the ride I could tell he was trying to show his horsemanship skills. However, I also could tell that he knew I could handle myself. We took the horses, my thoroughbred and his quarter horse, into the open field and we let them run. I was one with Brandy. She was magnificent. I lost all track of anything else. When we slowed down and climbed one of the hills, I looked back to see Chet at least a quarter mile behind me. We stopped on the crest of the hill and waited for Chet to catch up. I could tell he was perturbed. He didn't say anything to me at all. We rode along and I let Chet lead, more for his ego than because I didn't know all the trails. All too soon, we returned to his house. I steered Brandy right to the barn and her stall. Chet got off his horse at the entrance to the barn and said, I should go check on my guests. His tone made me think that I was no longer a welcome guest. I spent an hour removing the tack from Brandy and giving her a good rub down. I missed this. Growing up around horses was a great experience. When I walked to the house, I saw Chet talking to Audra. He was quite close to her and I didn't like it. She turned and looked at me. She looked nervous and also a little pissed. I came to her and she said, "You smell, go take a shower and change for dinner." Well, that was a terrific greeting. She must be really mad. I went to our room and decided to shave as well as shower and dress nicely for dinner. I had to get back in her good graces. When I came out to rejoin the group, they were all sitting on the patio. Chet and Audra were deep in conversation. As I walked up to them, they stopped talking and Audra looked guilty. I wonder what they were talking about. I thought. Dinner was nice, but Audra was still distant. She was avoiding my eye contact. It was almost 9 o'clock when we finished the meal, dessert, and the after-dinner drinks. We made our way to our room. Audra hardly said a word. Then, when she closed the door, she went into the ensuite with her overnight bag. I could hear her get into the shower. She spent 15 minutes in the shower and then what seemed like forever after the shower doing something in the bath. By this time I had undressed and climbed into bed. When she finally came out, she was wearing a teddy that I had purchased for her on one of our vacations. She looked spectacular. Perhaps what I thought was going to be a chilly night was actually going to be a chance for me to make up for showing up her boss. Then she grabbed her robe, put it on, and turned to me stating, "Kurt, I'm spending the night with Chet." I was speechless. I stared at her in bewilderment. Then I found my voice. "What? You heard me. I'm spending the night with Chet. What the fuck? Is that a joke?" "No. I am attracted to him, and he asked me." "You're the HR director. You know how wrong that is. It's one night. You'll get over it. You do this and we are through." "Oh, get real, Kurt, it won't affect anything. You've got to be kidding. I can't believe you're even talking about this. You don't own me," she said. The classic line of every woman that wants to do something she knows is wrong. "You do this and you can forget our marriage." I screamed. Then she said the line that I'm sure Chet had fed her. "Kurt, you rode his thoroughbred all day. It is only fair he gets to ride yours tonight." Then she was gone. I sat on the bed. I know I should run after her, but the fact that she thought she could do this, I would just let her do it, and then welcome her back, was unbelievable. She could go to hell. I stood up and paced around the bedroom. I walked to her side of the bed. Something caught my eye on her nightstand. Sitting there were her wedding band and engagement ring. The rings which I had put on her finger when we said our vows. I took my ring off my finger and looked at it. I squeezed it tightly in my left hand, raised my fist over my head and slammed it down, open-palmed onto the nightstand. Her rings jumped as I pulled my hand back quickly, rubbing the palm with my right thumb. Damn, that hurt. I looked at my hand. There was a red ring imprint in the palm of my hand. Then something happened. It was like a fuse blew in Kurt's brain. Kurt's emotions were gone. He unceremoniously packed his clothes and toiletries in his overnight bag and walked out of the bedroom, not even looking back. Kurt walked through the house, overnight bag in hand, went out the side door, and got into his car. He drove through the community and out the gate, waving at the guard as he passed by. The ride home was uneventful. Traffic was light for a Saturday night. All the way home he rubbed his left palm absent-mindedly. If he would have looked at his palm, he would have seen a bruise forming. Within about an hour he was home at his condo. He walked in and looked around. He wondered to himself why he had all this stuff. He brought his bag into the bedroom and threw his clothes into the hamper. He climbed into bed and soon fell sound asleep. The next morning his hand was quite bruised, but he made himself breakfast and sat at the table reading the news on his phone, absent-mindedly gently rubbing his hand. The phone rang. He looked at the number and didn't recognize it. He decided to answer it anyways. "Hello?" he said. There was no sound on the other end. He waited about 10 seconds and then hung up, thinking to himself that it was just another spam call. He promptly blocked the number, as he did with all the spam calls he received. After breakfast, Kurt decided to go for a run. It had been years since he had run on a regular basis. He used to do 5K and 10K runs all the time. He didn't know why he had stopped. Having not run in a long while, he took his time and ran only 2 miles. He was huffing when he got back. He was obviously out of shape and resolved himself to run every day. Audra. Sunday morning, Audra walked into the bedroom at about 9 a.m. The first thing she noticed was that Kurt was not there. She turned back and walked into the dining room to see if maybe Kurt had gotten drunk from the wet bar and passed out there. He was not there, however. A sense of dread came over her. Where could he be? She went back into the bedroom and noticed that Kurt's overnight bag was gone. She went to see if the car was still there. Of course it wasn't. She had dreaded that, but expected it. He was mad as hell when she walked out on him. She couldn't really blame him. She had spurned him, all for some mediocre sex. She couldn't enjoy the experience, physically because her hips were sore from riding the horse, and emotionally because she knew what she was doing to Kurt was wrong. Her eyes started watering. She sat down on the bed on her side. What had she done? Chet had been so charming, that mixed with his power and riches, along with Kurt being an ass when she tried to tell him not to go riding, had led to her abandoning her husband. As she cried, she dialed Kurt's number. He answered with hello? "Oh Kurt, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Please? Please come back and get me. We need to talk about this. Please, please forgive me." There was no sound on the other end of the line. He had hung up. She tried to call him back, but he didn't answer. Oh God, what am I going to do? She wiped her eyes and looked at her nightstand. Her ring sat there askew and his wedding band sat there in the middle of the top of the nightstand. Oh shit, she said and reached for his ring. When she picked it up, she saw a perfectly round indent in the wood, a circle, the symbol of their marriage. She remembered putting that ring on his finger and reciting the vows before friends and family. At that she started sobbing uncontrollably. It was probably a half an hour later that she entered the dining room where the others were finishing their breakfast. Her eyes were all puffy and red. "Audra, are you okay?" one of the other directors asked. She sniffled, straightened up, and asked, "Could one of you give me a ride back to town when you leave?" They didn't ask, they knew what had likely happened. They had seen Chet making his moves on her yesterday. The wife of one of the directors said, "Of course dear, we can leave whenever you are ready." Audra got the sense that she was not happy with what Chet and her had done. Audra turned around and went to pack her things. She put her rings back on her finger. She knew it wouldn't be as easy to restore her marriage. She hoped that Kurt would put his ring back on just as easily, but doubted that. She took off her robe and looked at the teddy on her body, the teddy that Kurt had bought for her. How could she have done this? What was she thinking? Clearly she wasn't thinking of Kurt or their marriage. She started crying again as she took a shower to try to wash off the scum that she felt covered her body. She felt so dirty. After about 20 minutes she knew that she couldn't wash off the guilt. She stepped out of the shower and toweled off. She looked at herself in the mirror. At least there were no marks as evidence of what she had done. She wouldn't have to hide herself from Kurt. She dressed and packed her things. She didn't bother putting on makeup. She knew she would be crying again. When she walked out into the living room, overnight bag in hand, the couple that had offered her a ride home was already waiting. They had already packed their suitcase in the car. "Okay, dear," she said, "let's get you home." The ride was mostly silent. What could they say? What could she say? It was past noon when she walked into their leased condo. It felt empty. She could tell Kurt wasn't there. She went straight to his dresser and pulled out a drawer. His clothes were still there. "Well, that's a good sign," she said to herself. She had expected that he would have gone. Kurt. After Kurt had taken a shower to wash off the sweat from his run, he decided to go out, enjoy the weather, maybe walk along the beach. When he got into his car, he put his hand on the steering wheel and quickly pulled it back. His hand hurt and was bruised. He thought about going to a med center, but being a guy, he blew it off. After his walk on the beach, he felt great. It was now about lunchtime, so he decided to grab a bite to eat. An In-N-Out burger would hit the spot. He decided to sit inside. He watched the people. There was one particular couple in their early 20s that he fixated on. What was so special about them he didn't know, but he kept looking at and thinking about them. They were focused only on each other, oblivious to his watching them. He smiled at that. After lunch, he decided to take a drive down the coast a bit. While the scenery was amazing, there was something that bothered him as he drove through the surrounding hills. Audra. All day she had tried calling Kurt, but it went right to voicemail. She wished he would call her. It was already 5 o'clock and she hadn't heard anything from him. She was starting to get worried. Would he return at all? She thought about calling one of their friends, but how could she explain why he wasn't with her? They knew that this was the weekend her boss had invited them to his house in Rolling Hills. She had made sure to let everyone know. She was cleaning, a habit of hers when she was nervous, when she heard the front door open. She came out of the bathroom and saw Kurt plop down on the couch, grab the remote, and turn on the TV. "Oh Kurt, I'm glad you're back. I'm so sorry for what I've done. Can you please forgive me?" He didn't say a word, he just watched the TV. "Kurt, will you talk to me?" she said as she moved closer to him. He still ignored her. She hated that about him. When he was mad, he would give her the silent treatment. She raised her voice, "Kurt, don't give me the silent treatment. Talk to me." He just sat there, watching TV. She grabbed the remote from the coffee table and turned the TV off. He looked puzzled and said out loud, "Now what?" and looked around wondering where the remote was. "Kurt, you have to talk to me. I told you I was sorry. Please talk to me." Kurt started looking on the couch and even on the floor for the remote. Audra was getting pissed that he was playing this game. He kept searching, so she threw the remote on the couch and said, "There's your damn remote. Grow up, and when you do, we need to talk about this." Kurt found the remote on the cushion next to him and looked puzzled, staring at it. He picked it up, shrugged, and turned the TV back on. Audra screamed, "Shut the fucking TV off and talk to me." Kurt just sat there watching TV. Audra stormed out of the room and slammed the bedroom door. Kurt. After an uneasy drive through the hills around LA, he decided it was time to go home. He was tired from just being out all day, so when he came through the door, he plopped down on the couch, grabbed the remote, turned on the TV and set the remote back down. He was watching TV and all of a sudden the TV shut itself off. He looked puzzled, said, "Now what?" and went to grab the remote. Now where was that remote? He looked around on the couch, on the floor, it was nowhere. As he looked to the left and there was no remote, he looked to the right, there it was sitting on the cushion where he had just looked. What the heck? He thought to himself. He turned the TV back on and continued to watch his show. A minute later, the bedroom door slammed shut. The wind must have pushed the door shut. He thought to himself. After a while, Kurt decided he was hungry, so he ordered pizza delivery. He ordered a small deluxe. $25 to have a small pizza delivered. That doesn't even include the tip. He thought to himself. The cost of living here is outrageous. Audra. The bastard actually ignored me. She said. She was angry. She should have expected it, he was childish that way. Whenever they fought, he would play the silent treatment. Of course, this was far worse than anything they had fought about before. She wished he would scream at her, stare with daggers in his eyes, anything but ignore her. She needed to know that he still cared. She started crying again. She had to figure out how to fix this. She must have fallen asleep, because when she woke up it was dark. She got out of bed and went into the living room to check on Kurt. There was an empty pizza box on the coffee table, but Kurt was not there. She checked the bathroom and then she checked the guest bedroom, it was locked. She hung her head and went back to their bedroom. Kurt. Monday morning, Kurt was up early. He was committed to start his training. He would be looking for 5K events to start running in as early as this weekend. He found a Planet Fitness close to where he worked. He signed up and hit the treadmill. After about 45 minutes, he hit the showers and dressed for work. He had been thinking while he was running. Why was he living in California? Sure, it had its positive points, but to Kurt the negatives, high cost of living, traffic, and housing prices, outweighed the positives and were killing his motivation at his job. Kurt worked at Northrop Grumman. He was an engineering technologist. Yes, he was a nerd. Today he was a nerd that wanted a change. He had decided that today he would speak to his boss about a transfer. Yes, he may have to take a pay reduction to move out of California, but the cost of living difference would more than make up for it. After all, there was nothing keeping him here. At work he went to his boss. Sir, I would like to find out about a transfer. What, to a different department? No, to a different state. I want out of this hellhole. California. Wow, I wish my wife would let me move out of here, between the housing cost and all the idiots on the road. It would reduce my blood pressure by 40 points. You're a lucky man to be able to get out. He put Kurt in touch with HR, and by the end of the day he had opportunities in Wyoming and Montana. Of course, there would be an interview process, but with his boss recommendation and his excellent job record it was just a formality. After work he decided to go to the gym again. He needed to work on lifting weights to help with his endurance. On his way home he picked up some Thai food so that he wouldn't have to cook. Walking in the door at 7 o'clock he sat down on the couch and opened his food. He needed something to drink, so he went to the refrigerator and grabbed a beer. Another night in front of the TV, eating takeout. What an existence! He thought. Audra. Audra woke on Monday morning and looked to the other side of the king bed. She knew he had stayed in the guest bed even before she saw his side of the bed had not been touched. Maybe he'll talk to me this morning, she thought as she made way to the bathroom. Once in the bathroom she noticed that his toothbrush, razor, and deodorant were gone. Has he moved them to the guest bedroom? She wondered. She went to the door and knocked. There was no answer, so she tried the knob. It was unlocked, and when she opened it she saw that he was already gone. She grabbed her phone and tried calling him again, but no luck, right to voicemail. She resigned herself to try to talk to him again this evening. At work she noticed that people were acting differently toward her. Evidently the weekend events did not stay within the directors. She would have to have a talk with them about spreading rumors and how private lives are to remain private. Perhaps she could stop it from spreading any further. The day seemed to drag on. She really wanted to be home. Kurt is usually home by 5:30. She wanted to have his favorite meal prepared for him when he got there. At 4 o'clock she left work, only a little earlier than normal, and had chicken Alfredo waiting for him at 5:25. She had rehearsed what she was going to say to him. By 6 o'clock she was getting worried. She went to check his clothes. It looked to her that it was all still there. That was good, he hadn't moved out. By 6:30 she was getting angry. The food had been put in the oven to stay warm. She tried calling him again, no luck. She would just wait. She kept looking at the clock. The digital numbers seemed to be taking forever to change. At 6:50 she sat at the table and put her head down. She had went from anticipation, to worry, to anger, to despair. He was over an hour late and he had not called. She needed to hear his voice. At 7:03 Kurt walked in the door. Audra hopped up and went to the oven to retrieve the food. Kurt came into the kitchen. Audra said, "I made your favorite. I'll have it on the table in just a minute." Kurt opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer, then walked back into the living room. Audra set the casserole dish on the table and looked over at Kurt in front of the TV. He was already eating from takeout containers. "Kurt, I made dinner. At least you could come to the table and eat it, even if you don't talk to me." There was no response, he didn't even look up. "Kurt, listen, you need to quit this. You need to say something." Again, no response. "Well, fuck you," she said as she dumped the chicken Alfredo in the garbage and stormed off to the bedroom again. She had to figure out how to get through to him. What could she do? After about a half an hour she went back out to the living room. "Kurt, will you look at me, will you talk to me?" she begged in a subdued tone. There was no response, he just kept watching TV. She decided to do all the talking. "Look Kurt, I know you're mad. I understand. What I did was wrong. I wish I could take it all back, but you know I can't. How do we get past this? I need you to talk to me, tell me what you want me to do." She contemplated telling him that she would quit her job, but she had worked hard to get where she was at. She needed the job because it fulfilled her. Kurt continued to ignore her. She was heartbroken. What could she do? Not knowing what to do, she went and sat on the couch next to him. She knew better than to try to hug or kiss him. Past fights had shown her that when he was mad he did not want any physical contact. So, she just sat there next to him on the couch. She sat there for an hour, him laughing OC. Occasionally at the sitcom he was watching, but he never said anything to her. At 8:30 he shut off the TV, got up, and went into the bath to get ready for bed. She just sat on the couch in the dark, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was realizing that she was going to have to give him time. She had cut him deep, this was a wound that would take her a long time to heal. She only hoped that he would give her that time. Tuesday he was up early again at the gym, his mind wandering as he ran on the treadmill. He decided on Wyoming. It would be close enough to Nebraska, his home state, but far enough from home that he wouldn't be expected to come home too often. He cherished his solitude. When he got to work there was a message for him from HR. He called and they told him that both Montana and Wyoming had requested an interview. He decided to pursue both, even though he was leaning toward Wyoming. Not wanting to waste any time he set up video interviews for the same day. With the time difference he would need to do it sooner rather than later. So, at 1 o'clock he had the Montana interview. He felt it went well and there was definitely a need that he could fill. Wyoming, however, had won him over, not because of the proximity to his home state, but because they were working on weaponizing hovering drones with lasers. This was something that he felt a strong attraction to and his present job experience would be of a particular advantage. "When can you start?" he was asked. "Give me this week to transfer my responsibilities and tie up a few loose ends here. Then I will need a week to get moved and settled in. Can we say the first week of October?" "That sounds good," his new boss said. "If you need help with anything feel free to call me or my assistant. We'll make sure to help make this a smooth transition." So, throughout that week Kurt spent his early mornings going to the gym and he worked late every day to ensure that all of his projects would move forward smoothly. This meant that when Audra had dinner ready on Tuesday night at 5:30 he was not there. By Thursday night she hadn't even bothered to make dinner. Each night he was home late, having either grabbed takeout or eating before he came home. There was still no interaction between the two. No matter how much Audra tried to talk to him, he ignored her. Friday night his fellow nerds took him out to a bar for an impromptu farewell party. That night he didn't get home until almost 11 o'clock and he was quite tipsy. He fell asleep passed out on the couch. Audra was disgusted and disappointed by Kurt and his reluctance to even acknowledge her. She had called a woman from her work and made arrangements to go to breakfast. She needed someone to talk to about this situation. She needed help. Her friend was divorced, maybe she would have some insight into how she could save her marriage. Audra was hoping to learn from someone else's mistakes. Learn what not to do. When Kurt woke up, and after taking aspirin and his first cup of coffee, he was ready to start packing up his clothes and other personal items. 2 hours later he was surprised that all of his belongings were in his car. His lease lasted for another 3 months, so yes, he would have some added expense, but the fact that he was leaving this shitty state was worth the added cost. Unceremoniously he got in the car and pulled out of his driveway. As he drove out of the complex he passed a car entering. He thought nothing of it, he had 2 days of driving to do. Audra. I wonder where he's going, she said to herself as she passed by Kurt's car going in the opposite direction. She had spoken to the woman, Melanie, about her divorce, what led to it and how she might be able to save her marriage. She had cheated with a family friend. By the time she found out that he knew, he was already gone. In fact, he had moved out of the country, that's how far gone he was. The picture Melanie had painted didn't look good. Some men, most men she had said, couldn't cope with the thought that his woman had given to someone else what he thought was his and his alone. If she thought about it, Audra would feel the same about her man if he had cheated. How could she fix this? It's not like she could wipe it from his memory. When Audra walked through the front door of their condo, something was different. When she looked into the living room, she noticed that the TV, DVD player and game console were gone. Oh shit, she said and ran to the bedroom. All of his clothes and toiletries were gone. She collapsed onto the bed. She was too late. Less than a week had passed and he was gone. Not a word or even a note, just gone. She grabbed her phone and started calling all of their friends, the hell with trying to cover for her indiscretion. Indiscretion, she thought, let me call it what it was, a fucking mistake, literally. None of their friends knew where he was, nor had they heard from him in over a week. She couldn't convince herself into call his parents. They were in Nebraska, surely he wasn't going there. What was she going to do? She was lost. Work had been a challenge. She had had to have more than one talk with guys making advances on her. She told them, in no uncertain terms, that their attention was not appreciated and would not be tolerated. In spite of the rumors being spread about last weekend, she had already gotten the moniker, HR bitch whispered behind her back. She was okay with that if it put a halt to the rumors and guys hitting on her. She knew it was futile, but she called Kurt anyways. Of course it went to voicemail. She left a message anyways. Kurt, I saw you leave. I don't know where you're going. I really wish you would talk to me. I love you. I am so sorry for what I've done. I don't know what to do to make it up to you. I'm starting to realize that there is nothing I can do. I fucked up. Please call me. I need to hear your voice. She hung up. She didn't end the call the way she usually did, with a I love ya. She knew it would sound hollow. Kurt had mapped it out. His plan was to drive to St. George, Utah today. Desert driving was grueling, very little to see or appreciate, so it would seem like a 10-hour drive even though it would probably only take me about 7 to 8 hours. He would find a motel and get up early to make the long drive through Utah and into Wyoming. As he traveled along, he thought about his life. College in Arizona was a different experience than his Midwest upbringing, but Embry-Riddle really brought out the best in him. Made him a perfect candidate for his career at Northrop Grumman. When they approached him to come work for them, he was ecstatic. It was a dream job. The years flew by. In fact, he could hardly remember much of it. Most of it, he knew, centered around work. With California behind him, he was looking forward to starting over in a new place, new challenges, and maybe he would find someone to share his life with him. He felt a hollowness in his soul when he thought about that. Audra. Monday morning, Audra decided she would take some time off work and try to force the issue by visiting Kurt at his job. Being a military contractor, security would not let her past the receptionist. When she asked to see Kurt, she was told that he wasn't available. Of course, she didn't believe that. They were covering for him. She asked to see his boss. When Mr. Haven came down to the reception area to speak with her, he was a little confused. "How can I help you, Mrs. Bryant?" "I need to speak with Kurt. I know that he is avoiding me, but I really need to speak with him." I'm a little confused. Kurt isn't here. Friday was his last day here." "He quit?" "No, last Monday he requested a transfer. He said he wanted out of this hellhole, California." "So where did he go?" I don't know that I should give you that information. If he didn't speak with you about it, then there must be a good reason. You're an HR director, I'm sure you understand." "So he left California?" "I probably shouldn't have even said that much." "He said." She knew that she would get no more information out of him, so she said, "Well, thank you. If you talk to him, please tell him that I want to talk to him." She could see that he understood there was trouble and that she wanted to try to resolve it. As she walked out to her car, she scanned the parking lot, just in case she was being fed a line of bullshit to cover for Kurt. After looking for a minute or so, she was disappointed that Kurt's car was nowhere to be seen. Mr. Haven had been telling her the truth. Kurt. Sunday's drive through Utah and into Wyoming was unbelievable. The scenery was breathtaking. He had never driven through Utah before, having always flown home from LA for the holidays. He would have to spend more time here now that he would be only one state away. Finding a hotel in Cheyenne was no problem. It was late September and the tourist season was already winding down. He decided on a Town Place Suites by Marriott. That allowed him some time to find a nice townhouse or condo, while still having the ability to cook his own meals. It also had a fitness room so he could continue his training. He would have to see about changing his Planet Fitness membership to Cheyenne. He may have to just cancel his membership and start a new one. That brought to mind that he would have to get a new bank account and have work change his automatic deposit. Of course, he would have to change his driver's license too. He would have to start making a list. Monday he started working through his list. The DMV was pretty much what he expected: grab a number and wait. Fortunately, it didn't take as long as he thought it would. They were pretty efficient. Setting up a new bank account was also easier than he thought. They were even able to give him a debit card that same day. He would wait until he got his checks before making arrangements to close his accounts in California. By 2 o'clock he had everything done on his list. He decided to swing by his new work location and introduce himself to his new boss. His boss was extremely helpful, even giving him suggestions of what areas of town to avoid and where to look for good housing. After about a half hour of sitting and talking to him, he thought to himself that they would get along great. Wyoming looked like it would be a great change in his life, maybe even a permanent location. Weeks went by, Kurt getting acclimated to his new job, and Audra kept trying to find him, but with no luck. It was then that Audra decided she needed to take drastic measures. She picked up the phone and called Kurt's parents. She was sure that he would have given them all the details of her blatant adultery. They were church-going people. She was sure that if they spoke to her at all, that she would be getting an earful. "Hello, Carol, it's Audra," she said hesitantly. "Carol? What's with the formality? You know you can call me Mom." Audra was confused. Would Kurt have gone a month without calling and telling his parents? "Sorry, Mom. How have you been?" "Good. So how do you like Wyoming?" So that is where he is. Audra thought. "It's okay. Audra said, then she took a chance and said, "What has Kurt said about it?" "Oh, Kurt, he doesn't say a whole lot. He said he's glad to be out of California though. I was surprised that you didn't fight him on that." "Well, we did have a discussion. I think you will learn to like the Midwest. Give it a chance." "Okay, thanks Mom, I have to go now, but I'll keep in touch." Audra hung up. She was confused. He left her without saying a word, but seems to be covering it up with his parents. Was there still hope? If he didn't tell his parents the details, then he must be willing to work on their relationship. How could they do that if he wouldn't answer her calls? Well, at least now she knew where he was. She decided to buy a track phone and call Kurt from it. Maybe now that some time has passed he will be willing to talk to her. She went right to a store and purchased one. He has to answer, she said to herself. She dialed his number. "Welcome to Verizon Wireless. The number you have dialed has been changed, disconnected, or is no longer in service. Please check the number and dial again." She looked at the phone to ensure she had called the right number. Yep, it was Kurt's number, or at least it used to be. Shit, he must have gotten a new number. Now what was she going to do? She couldn't call her mother-in-law back and ask her for the new number. Well, she knew he was in Wyoming and was transferred through work, so she would start there. She looked up Northrop Grumman's website and searched the state of Wyoming. They have a branch in Cheyenne. Great, the capital. How would she find him among 100,000 people? Then she thought about hiring a private detective to find him. What would that do? She still needed to talk to him. She decided to make arrangements to take a week off and find him herself. Kurt. At work, Kurt was getting along great, was starting to feel like a part of a team. It was late October and the HR department was putting the word out that benefits open enrollment needed to be done soon. As Kurt reviewed all his benefits, he noticed that instead of a single plan, he was on a family plan. There must be some sort of mistake? Kurt thought to himself. He immediately made the changes to the single plan for the next year and inquired about possibly getting a refund. HR checked into it and told him that he had approved the plan last fall and that they could do nothing about it as that is what he had chosen. Kurt was puzzled and absent-mindedly rubbed his left palm. He looked down at his hand as he rubbed. In his palm, under his skin, was a circle of hard tissue about the size of a nickel. He thought to himself, I should get my hand checked. Audra. 3 weeks after speaking with Kurt's mom, Audra was sitting outside his work waiting to see his car drive out of the parking lot. At 5:30 she spotted it and followed him. He drove to the Planet Fitness and went in. Did she want to go in there and confront him? What if he ignored her again and just left before she could follow him? Then she would lose the ability to find out where he lived. She also couldn't sit down with him, like a normal husband and wife, and talk to him. No, better to wait. So, after about an hour, Kurt walked out to his car and Audra followed him as he drove to the hotel where he was staying. She was angry that he had abandoned her, and also apprehensive about how she should approach the situation. How should she do this? Just go knock on his door? Say hi and can we talk? She sat in her car going through every scenario. He could get violent, but that was not Kurt. He could scream and yell, she would deserve that, and actually it would be better than what he had done at home. Would he pull the silent treatment and just not talk to her? They needed to talk this out. She had made a huge mistake. She knew it even while it was happening, but the fact that Kurt had not listened to her, but rather had to go writing so he could show up Chet, had really annoyed her. He just couldn't play nice, rather potentially putting her job status in jeopardy. By the time it dawned on her that she was making the big mistake, she was already in bed with Chet. By that time the damage had already been done. She finally got up enough courage to walk up to his door and rang the doorbell. She could hear Kurt inside as he approached the door. She could tell he was looking at her through the peephole. After about 10 seconds he walked away from the door. She started knocking and started pleading with Kurt to open up and talk to her. There was still no response. She was angry now. She started pounding on the door, ringing the doorbell, and yelling for Kurt to open up. The neighbors from the next unit opened their door and looked at her. She stopped. "What are you doing?" they asked in an accusing tone. "I'm trying to get my husband to open the door and talk to me," she exclaimed. "Husband? Kurt lives there. He's not married. I think you have the wrong room. He is to my husband. We've been married for the last 3 years." The wife of the couple said very matter-of-factly. "We've had him over for supper a couple times and he was quite adamant that he was not married. He dated a girl in college for a while, but that didn't work out. I don't know what kind of shit you're trying to pull, but if you don't leave we will call the cops." Audra stood there in shock. He was telling everyone he was single, how could he? She thought. Kurt. Inside the apartment, Kurt had just gotten home, threw his gym clothes in the washer, and threw on some sweats to relax in. Then this doorbell rang. He walked over and looked through the peephole. "That's odd," he said to himself. There was nobody there. A few minutes later he heard his neighbor talking on the front walk. It sounded a little bit like an argument. They were a nice couple and he hoped that they worked it out. As he stood there he absent-mindedly rubbed the palm of his hand, feeling the circle under the skin. Audra. Cops aren't going to help this situation, Audra said to herself, so she headed back to her car. She had to figure out some way to get Kurt to talk with her. Sitting in her car she thought about their time together. How, if she wasn't such a klutz, they would have never gotten together. She thought about them dating and how it took 3 months before they made love. Audra had been eager long before that, but Kurt enjoyed spending time and getting to know each other. That first time was so passionate and loving. He had touched her in ways that no one had ever done, both physically and emotionally. She knew that he was the one. Why the fuck did she do what she had done? She knew Kurt and his Midwestern values would never allow that. Chet was so charismatic and powerful. It was like she had no control. At least that is what she was telling herself, even though she knew it wasn't true. She knew it was wrong. She knew, deep down, that it would destroy their marriage, but Chet was so convincing, and he had something to prove after Kurt had shown his superior writing skills. Damn it, Kurt, why did you have to provoke him? She knew she was pushing the blame off herself onto Kurt. She also knew that, although she had said, "You don't own me," that wasn't the way either one of them thought. They were one, and yes, he owned her just like she owned him. They were each other's most prized possession. She started crying again. After about 10 minutes she started the car and drove to another hotel. It was a restless night. She had dreams, no nightmares. Of Kurt disowning her, telling her he never really loved her, she was just a fine piece of ass. In the morning she decided to go to his work and speak to him there. Kurt. It was about 10 o'clock when he received a call from the receptionist telling him that there was someone in the lobby to see him. I wonder who that could be, he wondered to himself. When he approached the receptionist she said, "That woman asked for you," as she pointed to the furniture in the lobby. He looked and there was no one there. He chuckled and said, "Funny, you got me, Chloe. Pick on the new guy, make him feel like he is part of the team now." Then he turned and walked back to his desk, rubbing his palm as he did. Chloe looked puzzled as Kurt walked away. The woman had gotten up and approached the reception desk as Kurt had been talking. She was standing 5 feet from him when he turned and walked away. Audra stood there in shock. Kurt had totally ignored her, not even acknowledging her presence in the same room, in front of another person. Chloe apologized to the woman as she was telling her that she was his wife, but they had had a huge argument. Chloe, not sure what to do, called the HR person. As he came out to the lobby he was overtly checking out the beautiful woman in the lobby. He hated that he couldn't give her a good once-over. Being in HR meant he had to set the right example. He wondered how many of the women here he would have been able to date if he hadn't have had to be a proper HR person. "Hello, I'm Mr. Miller. What can I do for you, miss? I want to speak with my husband, but he won't talk to me." Confused, he looked at the receptionist. "She is here to see Kurt Bryant," but when he came out he totally ignored her and walked away. Now he was really confused. Kurt had just recently spoken to him about his benefits. How he had been charged for family benefits when in actuality he was single. Ah. Kurt has told me specifically that he is single. In fact, he changed his benefits to reflect that. Did you recently get divorced? No, we had an argument and he transferred here. I don't know what to say. Call LA, they'll tell you. Speak to his old boss, Mr. Haven. She said. Even if that's true, it appears he doesn't want to talk to you. Talk to him for me, please. She pleaded. Let me talk to him. He said. When he had talked to him, Kurt was adamant that he was not now, nor was he ever married. He went back to the woman in the lobby and told her what Kurt had said. The woman insisted that she was his wife. She showed him her driver's license. She indeed had the same last name as Kurt and had an address in LA. She was so insistent, so he decided to call the LA office. Mr. Haven did tell him that Kurt was married, or at least was when he worked there. Audra had, in fact, come in and spoken to him after he had transferred. He described Audra to him and she matched the woman that was in the lobby. Also, Kurt's previous address did match what was on the woman's driver's license. Miss, leave your number with Chloe and I will try to get to the bottom of this. Are you staying in town? He asked her, and then thought, a woman that looks like her must be a bitch, or done something really bad to want to get rid of her. Mr. Miller checked some more info and was baffled when he again spoke with Kurt about his marital status. He was a good judge of character and could read body language well enough to believe that Kurt was telling the truth, at least he thought he was. That is when he decided to call a psychologist friend of his. Northrop Grumman is a military contractor and ensuring that the employees were mentally stable was extremely important. He had an opening the following day, so Mr. Miller made arrangements for Kurt to visit him. He then called Audra. Mrs. Bryant, something isn't quite adding up here. I have spoken to your husband and he is quite adamant that he has no wife. Well, I can assure you that I am. I believe you. Everything I've checked on points to that. I've made an appointment with a psychologist for Kurt tomorrow afternoon. Let me ask you, has he had any head trauma recently? I don't know of any, but it's been weeks since I've seen him last. Well, the psychologist should be able to help. Kurt was sitting in Dr. Afton's office when the doctor asked, so Kurt, as you know, your employer has asked for an evaluation. I'm sure it has something to do with regulations pertaining to the government. Okay, said Kurt, confused as to why he was here. Tell me about yourself. Give me a brief autobiography. Kurt spent the next 15 minutes telling him about his life with the doctor asking clarification questions every once in a while. At the end the doctor asked, tell me about your relationship with your mother. Kurt spoke of growing up in Nebraska and feeling nothing but love from his mother. They had a close relationship. How about girlfriends? Kurt spoke about dating and how he had a girlfriend in 11th grade, but she wanted to date other guys before she went to college, so they had broken up. Of course he was hurt, but his senior year was full of dating other girls, so he reasoned it was actually for the best. In college there was one particular girl that he dated. In fact, he dated her for 2.5 years. They had talked about marriage after graduation. That relationship ended poorly. She started dating a football player behind his back. He got wind of it from a friend and confronted her. Needless to say, they broke up and never married. After college, he had been concentrating on his career, so, although he dated a few times, there was no time for a serious relationship. So, what are your thoughts about being married? The doctor questioned. I am not opposed to it, but I don't think it will happen. I'm approaching 30 and while I may want to get married, I don't know if I could trust someone enough. Besides, I'm already pretty set in my ways. After a few more questions and answers, the doctor excused him. He then called Mr. Miller. I've checked out his background. Mr. Miller said. He definitely is married. How do you explain this? Something big must have happened for him to have selective amnesia. Are we sure he wasn't in an accident? What do you mean selective amnesia? As a defense mechanism, our brains block out certain events. Accident victims can't remember events leading up to, during, and for a period after the accident. That way, the memory of the traumatic event is gone. It is probably there in their subconscious, but unless something specific can be introduced, the memory is unattainable by the patient. Let me talk to his wife and try to determine if there was a traumatic event that could have triggered this, Mr. Miller said. Audra. He called Audra and explained that the doctor's determination was selective amnesia. What happened right before he transferred here? Audra was quiet. He could tell that it was something big and that she didn't want to discuss it. Perhaps it would be better if I spoke with you in person about this. Sometimes having a shoulder to cry on helps. Besides, he thought, he wouldn't mind spending time with this gorgeous woman. They met at a restaurant near work. He explained to her what the doctor had said. Then he asked, what happened that could make him forget being married to such a lovely woman? She was being evasive as she told him that they had a huge argument about a week or so before he left for Wyoming. It must have been something traumatic to cause this amnesia. Then she broke down. I cheated on him with my boss. She finally admitted. Just then Audra heard Kurt's voice. She heard it across the sparsely filled dining room. She turned and saw him speaking to the hostess. I have a to-go order. Your name? Kurt Bryant. I'll go check on it, Mr. Bryant, she said as she disappeared into the kitchen. Audra, seeing her chance to talk to him, got up and rushed up to him. Kurt. Oh honey, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. He stood there ignoring her, not even looking in her direction. Kurt, she said, and grabbed his arm. It was as if his arm was limp. She tugged on it and his arm moved, but his body had no reaction. She stood right in front of him, and yet he ignored her. She started screaming at him and stomping her feet. The hostess came back with Kurt's food and spoke to Audra. Miss, what is your problem? This is my husband, and he won't talk to me. The whole time while this was happening, Kurt stood there emotionless. He noticed his food and asked, Is that my food? The hostess stammered and said, Oh, yeah. I've already paid for it. Audra was still holding on to one arm and he grabbed the food with the other hand. Thank you, he said to the hostess and turned to leave. He was actually pulling Audra along with the arm she clung to. He made his way to his car, set the food on the roof, hit the remote to unlock the car, and opened the car door right into Audra. All the while Audra was pleading with Kurt to say something to her, anything. When the door hit her, she lost her grip on his arm and he grabbed his food and got inside his car and locked the door. She started banging on the window, but Kurt just started the car up and put it in drive. Audra had to back up quickly or she would have had her foot run over. As Kurt pulled away, she slumped to the ground. This whole time, Mr. Miller had been watching the transaction. He couldn't believe it. He went over to Audra and helped her up and walked her back into the restaurant. They talked about what had just transpired. They both were amazed at his total lack of acknowledgement of her. I am going to have the psychologist speak to him again. May I ask you to send me photos of you and Kurt together? Sure, I have a number of them. I can forward them with my phone. Okay, send them to my phone and I will forward them to him. Do you have a photo of just yourself, maybe a bit more personal that could jog his memory? Oh, yeah. It is very personal though, Audra hesitantly said. It might be just the thing to make him remember. He said, and thought, and I wouldn't mind adding it to my personal collection. Kurt was called into Mr. Miller's office and directed to the psychologist's office again. He was puzzled by the necessity for an additional visit. Mr. Bryant, please sit down. May I ask why I need another evaluation? Is there a problem? Just to follow up. It shouldn't take long, he said. Mr. Miller had filled him in on the events of the previous day at the restaurant. He had also forwarded the photos to him. Do you know a Miss Audra Jackson? Using her maiden name. No, I haven't met anyone by that name. As he said this, he is rubbing the palm of his hand. Could you look at this photo and tell me what you see? The photo was of Kurt and Audra taken at a restaurant shortly after they had started dating. It is a picture of me sitting at a restaurant that I frequented in the LA area. Who else is in the photo? There are a couple people in the background, but I don't know who they are, just some customers. The doctor looked at the photo. Kurt was obviously sitting at a table with his arm around a woman that Mr. Miller had told him was Kurt's wife. He tried another photo. That is me at the beach, at the cabana. How did you get these photos? Is the government spying on me? Oh no, I got them from Mr. Miller. He got them from a friend of yours in LA. He showed him a few more photos and the response was the same. Although his wife was in every picture, he didn't see her. He was starting to get a little irritated, all the time rubbing his palm. Just one more, Mr. Bryant, he said as he showed him the photo of his wife, in a teddy, sitting up in a bed. It is a picture of what looks to be an expensive bedroom, maybe a hotel. Okay, Kurt. Thank you, that will be all. Dismissed, Kurt got up and left, returning to work. When Mr. Miller was informed about the result of the appointment, he asked, "Should I be concerned about him working here?" "No, I don't believe so. He seems to be fully functional. Other than him blocking out anything in regards to his wife, there should be no problem. He may at some time in the future recover those memories, but he may not. Those years with her are just filled with his work life. However, if he appears to have any memory return, or issues dealing with the time he was married, please get back in touch with me." Mr. Miller called Audra, "Mrs. Bryant, I spoke with the doctor. The pictures didn't help. It is the selective amnesia. He has forgotten about you and your marriage." It was then that Audrey remembered what Kurt had said to her before she walked out of that bedroom, before she walked out of her marriage to have sex with her boss. She didn't even bother saying goodbye, she just hung up. Kurt had told her she could forget about being married, he was the one that forgot about their marriage. Finally realizing that she had destroyed her marriage, and also needing to get back to work, she started packing for the drive back to LA. As she was packing, she thought about the end of her marriage and also about her job. She was sorrowful for her marriage and had mixed feelings for her job. She would need to stay working there at least for now, she needed money to survive and she was compensated well for her position as HR director. She knew, however, that her heart would not be in it like it had been. As she was getting ready to leave and settling up her hotel bill, she opened her Gucci purse to retrieve her car keys. There in the bottom of her purse was Kurt's ring. She had brought it in hopes that they would reconcile and he would put it back on. What was she going to do with it now? She would leave that decision for another day. As she started out on the long trek back, tears in her eyes, she said out loud, "I hope you find happiness, Kurt." Epilogue, about 1 year later. Audra, Chet Halverson said. "Why do you seem so sad?" "This weekend will be 1 year." She said quietly. "I understand." He said, and he did understand. After Audra returned from her vacation, she was distant. Chet tried to cheer her up and even suggested a repeat performance of that fateful night. She turned him down flatly, and even informed him that his advances were unwanted and any further effort to have anything but a professional relationship with her would meet with a sexual harassment suit. He took that warning to heart and made no further advance toward her. It was a week later that Audra filed for divorce. She knew that the marriage was over, but it held out hope that Kurt would have an epiphany and remember the good times they had together. In speaking with Mr. Miller, she knew that he still hadn't shown any signs of acknowledging his marriage. When the papers arrived, by certified mail, Kurt opened the envelope with curiosity, but when he read the first few lines his mind went blank and he dropped the envelope and its contents in the trash. Then he absent-mindedly rubbed the palm of his left hand. 90 days went by and Audra was with her lawyer in front of a judge. She had the doctor's report, as well as Mr. Miller's report that made it obvious to everyone there that there was no reason not to grant the divorce. She would never forget her marriage to Kurt. Hopefully, she could find someone else and learn from her past mistake. That weekend Chet was in his stable telling his groomer to saddle up the thoroughbred. The groomer looked at him surprised. Chet didn't like riding the horse, it was too high-strung. He preferred the quarter horse, a much easier ride. However, Audra had mentioned the finalization of her divorce and he got to thinking about how her husband had handled the beast with such ease. He also remembered how he had shown him up on that weekend. He needed to prove to himself that he was not second place, especially to a man that threw away such a beautiful woman. He had been out on the trails for about a half an hour when all of a sudden the horse screamed and bucked Chet off his back. Chet fell hard, but as he lay on the ground he felt a burning sensation in his left hand, and as he pulled his hand to his chest he saw the horse rear and his front feet come down upon him. He woke up in the hospital 3 days later. His hand was bandaged and he was confused, trying to remember what had happened. The nurse, noticing his activity, came into the room. "Mr. Halverson, how are you feeling? You are in the hospital. You have suffered an accident. I will get the doctor and she will explain everything." He hadn't even had a chance to answer her, or ask any questions before she was gone. He wondered what had happened. He didn't remember much. He started accessing his situation. His hand still hurt. He remembered that much of what had happened. His back was sore, but other than that he didn't feel too bad. Then the doctor entered. She was a lovely redhead, early 40s, with a serious yet empathetic look on her face. "Mr. Halverson, my name is Dr. Patton. How are you feeling?" "My hand hurts and also my back, but other than that, okay." "You took quite the fall from your horse. What do you remember?" "I was riding my thoroughbred through the hills around my estate," he said, trying to impress this lovely doctor. "Something spooked my horse and it bucked me off. I remember hitting the ground, then my hand hurt. That is all I remember. We'll discuss the hand in a minute. Can you tell me how your body feels? Where else do you hurt?" "My back hurts, but I hit the ground pretty hard." "Mr. Halverson. Call me Chet, please," he said, no reason they shouldn't be on a first-name basis. "Okay, Chet. I need you to tell me, can you feel your toes?" Chet thought about it, then panic started to set in. He couldn't feel his toes, or his feet, or even his legs. He tilted his head up to see if somehow they were gone. Nope, they were still there, but he couldn't feel them, and as hard as he tried he couldn't move them. "Your horse accidentally came down on your pelvic region with its front feet. You have internal damage and your pelvic bone is shattered. If it wasn't for one of you neighbors being out on the trails, seeing what happened, and calling for an ambulance immediately, you probably would be dead from internal bleeding." Chet was in shock. The doctor continued. "Your spinal cord was severed and you have lost all feeling and function in the lower half of your body." Chet's head was spinning. The doctor was continuing to talk to him about his condition and the prognosis going forward, but he didn't hear her. He was paralyzed from the waist down. That is all he could think about. "Kurt?" Mr. Miller had said, "You've been smiling all week. Is there some reason, maybe you remembered some happy memories from the past?" "No, actually I don't really know why, but life just seems so great right now. There is no reason to go around being Mr. Broody. It is a sunny day and things have just been great this last week." Kurt loved his job. He had been working on a pet project for the last year. It involved an extremely remote drone guidance system. They had tested it over the last weekend, and even from half a country away he could fly a laser-equipped 3-foot diameter drone. The laser could hit a target from 3,000 feet up with pinpoint accuracy. The military, as well as law enforcement's applications, were almost immeasurable. This would give us a tremendous edge against our enemies. He stood talking to Mr. Miller absent-mindedly, rubbing the palm of his left hand, feeling the circle under his skin. "Well, I'm glad for you, Kurt. Keep up the good work." 3 weeks later Chet was home trying to get used to his new normal. He had to move into one of the main floor bedrooms as his master bedroom was upstairs. His wheelchair wouldn't allow for him to stay there. He also had to get used to having a colostomy bag and all the new routines as well as the requirements that were foisted upon his life. His life, he thought. What kind of a life would this be? His groomer, cook, and now nurse had all been very sympathetic about his new situation, but they were just paid hands. Other than a few neighbors, and the guy that found him and called the ambulance, he hadn't had any other friends visit him. Did he have any true friends? Were they all just acquaintances? As he was pondering that, staring out the back of his house overlooking the hills, his groomer came in and had a concerned look on his face. "What is it?" Chet asked. "Sir, I think I may have to have the vet out tomorrow." "Why is that?" "There is a sore that, no matter what salve I've applied, refuses to heal." "Here, let me zoom in so you can see it." There, in the picture, was an obvious sore, a perfect circle about the size of a nickel. Chet opened his left hand and showed it to the groomer. They both stared, amazed. There in his palm was a perfect circle about the size of a nickel. They didn't know what to make of it. That night as Chet was maneuvering his wheelchair to the side of his bed, he took off his watch and set it on the nightstand. There, something caught his eye. There was an indent on the nightstand. He just looked at it, and then looked at his hand.